The blood on the floor of Memorial Grace Hospital's emergency room was still warm. It pooled in the cracks between white linoleum tiles, dark and viscous, under fluorescent lights that buzzed like dying insects. The clock on the wall read 1:47 a.m. The graveyard shift, the hours when the living world slept and the forgotten kept watch. Vivian Hartley was on her knees. Her hands moved in slow, methodical circles. The mop swept across tile, soaking up crimson evidence of someone's trauma. Someone who had left on a stretcher 3 hours ago. Someone whose name she didn't know and would never learn. At 56 years old, Vivian looked exactly like what she was supposed to be. Invisible. Her uniform hung 2 sizes too large on her thin frame, like a child playing dress-up in adult clothes. Gray-brown hair pulled back into a bun so tight it stretched the skin of her face. No makeup, no jewelry, except a battered watch on her left wrist, a G-Shock. Military issue. The kind that could survive being run over by a tank. But no one noticed details like that. Her shoulders hunched forward as she worked, creating the illusion of a woman whose spine had been slowly crushed by the weight of a long, unremarkable life. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrung out the mop. A subtle shake anyone watching might attribute to age, or early Parkinson's, or simply accumulated exhaustion from decades doing work no one wanted to acknowledge. The tremor was a lie. Everything about Vivian Hartley was a lie. Automatic doors at the far end of the emergency room hissed open. Footsteps, confident, rapid, the expensive kind of shoes that clicked against tile with sharp percussion of authority. Dr. Dominic Ashford entered the ER like a man who had never doubted his right to occupy space. 37 years old and assembled by genetic engineers tasked with creating the perfect specimen of American masculinity. 6'2", broad shoulders. The kind of jawline that made people trust him before he opened his mouth. Dark hair precisely cut. Scrubs somehow crisp despite the hour. On his white coat his name embroidered in navy thread. Below it, trauma. He scrolled through his phone as he walked, not looking up. Not looking at anything except the small glowing screen. He walked directly through the wet patch Vivian had just cleaned. His footprints tracked red across white tile, diluted blood mixed with disinfectant. A trail of carelessness. Vivian stopped mopping, looked up at him, her face carefully blank. The face of someone who had learned long ago that expressions were dangerous, that showing what you felt was handing someone a weapon. Dr. Ashford finally glanced down, noticed the wet floor, the tracks, looked at Vivian kneeling there with her mop. "Missed the spot by the sink," he said without slowing, his voice smooth, educated, the accent of New England boarding schools and Ivy League lecture halls. "Are your hands shaking again, Vivian?" The use of her first name deliberate, not respectful, not friendly. The way someone might speak to a child or a dog. Vivian lowered her eyes. "Yes, doctor," she said quietly. "Sorry, doctor." Her voice barely above a whisper. The voice of someone who had learned to make herself small, to take up as little auditory space as she did visual. Dr. Ashford already walking away. He pushed through double doors leading to the physician's lounge. Pneumatic hinges sighed shut behind him. Vivian remained kneeling on the floor, but her eyes shifted, not following Ashford, looking past where he had been standing, looking at the bank of patient monitors mounted on the wall behind the main nurses' station, room 408. The displays showed vital signs in glowing green numbers: heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen saturation, respiratory rate. The patient had arrived an hour ago, young male, mid-20s, minor car accident, chest contusion. Dr. Ashford had assessed him personally, declared him stable, sent him upstairs for overnight observation. But something was wrong with the waveforms, subtle. The arterial line tracing showed a pattern, a slight variation in pulse pressure, the kind of thing that might go unnoticed unless you knew exactly what you were looking for. Early pneumothorax, air leaking into the pleural space, slowly building pressure. In another few hours, maybe less, it would become tension pneumothorax. The patient would crash. His lung would collapse completely. His heart would have no room to beat. Vivian looked at the monitor for exactly 3 more seconds, then went back to mopping the floor. She said nothing. She was just the janitor after all. At 1:55 a.m., the night shift prepared for their 2 o'clock briefing. Vivian finished mopping, emptied her bucket in the utility sink, wrung out the mop with careful precision, hung it to dry, every movement slow, deliberate, the performance of someone whose body no longer moved with the efficiency of youth. Another lie. She shuffled toward the staff conference room, the small fluorescent bright space that smelled like burnt coffee and institutional disinfection. The door was ajar. Voices inside, laughter. Vivian paused in the hallway, listening. "I swear to God," a young voice said. Natalie Pierce, 23. Fresh from nursing school. She stares at walls, like literally just stares. I asked her what she was thinking about, and she said, "Nothing." Who thinks about nothing? More laughter. "Maybe she's meditating," someone offered. Derek, physician assistant, mid-30s, always laughed at Dr. Ashford's jokes. "Or maybe she's having a stroke in slow motion," Natalie said. "Has anyone checked if she blinks?" "Be nice," another voice, older, one of the senior nurses. "She's harmless." "She's creepy," Natalie corrected, and her hands shake. Should someone that shaky even be handling biohazard cleanup? Vivian stood in the hallway. Her face showed nothing, but behind her eyes a memory surfaced. Ramadi, Iraq, 11 years ago. The interior of a compound. Darkness. Night vision turning the world green. The weight of her medical pack. The smell of cordite and dust and fear. A ranger down. Femoral artery bleed. Spurting. The kind of bleeding that meant you had minutes. Maybe less. Her hands had been steady. Rock steady. Threading a needle through torn flesh while rounds cracked overhead. While the world tried very hard to kill everyone in that room, her hands had not shaken. Not once. The memory dissolved. Vivian was back in the hospital hallway, the voices still laughing inside the conference room. She shuffled through the door. The conversation stopped. 12 people crowded around a rectangular table. Nurses, physician assistants, respiratory therapists, the essential machinery of a hospital's overnight operations. Dr. Dominic Ashford sat at the head, because of course he did. Fresh scrub top, tablet open to patient charts. The picture of professional competence. Vivian didn't sit at the table. She took a plastic chair against the wall, the kind brought in for visitors, for people who weren't quite part of the team. Hands folded in her lap, posture curved inward, trying to disappear into the paint. Natalie Pierce sat directly across from Dr. Ashford, phone face down on the table, vibrating periodically with notifications she tried to ignore but couldn't help glancing at. "All right," Dr. Ashford said. "Quick rundown. Bed 3 needs repeat CBC in 2 hours. Bed 9 waiting on ortho consult, but they're backed up, so don't bother paging until 0400. Room 408 is our MVA from earlier. Minor chest contusion. Stable? Discharge in the morning." Vivian's fingers tightened slightly in her lap. Room 408, the patient with the developing pneumothorax. The patient Dr. Ashford had missed. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Dr. Ashford continued. "Bed 7 post-appendectomy. Bed 12, he stopped, looked up from his tablet. His eyes swept the room and landed on Vivian in the back corner. A smile touched his lips. Not kind. The smile of someone who had just thought of something amusing. "Actually," he said, "before we break, I want to address something." The room shifted. People glanced at each other. The energy changed from professional tedium to something else. Anticipation. The kind that came before a spectacle. "Vivian," Dr. Ashford said, "stand up, please." Vivian didn't move for a moment, then slowly unfolded from her chair, stood with shoulders hunched, head slightly bowed. Someone called to the front of a classroom for punishment. "I've been reviewing our staffing efficiency metrics, Doctor." Ashford continued. Tone casual, conversational, someone discussing the weather. Our cleaning response times on night shift are 18% slower than day shift. 18%. You know what that means? No one answered. It means patients sit in their own blood and vomit 18% longer when Vivian is on duty. He smiled again. Now, I don't want to be ageist, but Vivian, you're what, 56? 57? 56, Vivian whispered. 56. Doctor. Ashford looked around the table, making sure everyone paid attention. Look, I respect your generation. I do. My parents are your age. Great people. But there comes a time when we have to be honest about our limitations. Your hands shake, you move slowly. And frankly, the modern ER is a young person's environment. Fast-paced, high stress. Maybe it's time to consider other options. Natalie looked down at the table, not meeting anyone's eyes, but the corners of her mouth twitched, fighting a smile. What kind of options, Doctor? Derek asked. Well, Dr. Ashford said, I hear assisted living facilities are always hiring. Light duty, slow pace, probably more age-appropriate. Your generation doesn't really understand modern medicine anyway. All this technology, these protocols. It's a lot for someone who learned nursing when we were still using glass thermometers and paper charts. He looked directly at Vivian. You can sit down now. Vivian sat. But something happened. Something no one in the room noticed except perhaps Dr. Ashford, and even he couldn't have understood what he was seeing. For a fraction of a second, Vivian's eyes changed. The defeated, downcast expression vanished, replaced by something else, something cold and evaluating and utterly without fear. The look of someone who had categorized every exit, every potential weapon, every vulnerable point on Dr. Ashford's body where a strike would cause maximum incapacitation, the look of a predator. Then it was gone. Just the janitor again, sitting in the corner, invisible, but in that microscopic instant, another memory. Mosul, northern Iraq, 9 years ago, the ambush that ended her career. 23 Rangers pinned down in a kill box. Insurgents on 3 sides. No air support, no quick reaction force, just her and 2 squads and a radio that didn't work. She had looked at the tactical situation, calculated odds, done the math. 0% chance of survival if they stayed, 20% if they moved. She had made the choice, and 23 Rangers had walked out of Mosul alive. The memory faded. The conference room came back into focus. The meeting breaking up, people standing, collecting things, not looking at her. Natalie walked past without making eye contact. Dr. Ashford already gone. Vivian stood slowly, joints making small sounds, the performance of age and deterioration. She shuffled toward the door. At 2 a.m. exactly, the ER entrance doors burst open, not the ambulance bay, the main entrance, the automatic sliding doors that led to the waiting room. A woman stumbled through, 70-something, clutching her chest, skin gray, gasping. "Help," she managed. "Can't breathe." The triage nurse was up immediately, hit the call button. "Need a doc in triage. Possible MI." Doctor Ashford appeared from the break room, coffee in hand. He set it down, switched modes. This was his element. "Get her in Bay 2, he ordered. 12-lead EKG, troponin, BMP. Move." They transferred the woman to a wheelchair, rushed her back. Vivian watched from the hallway where she was restocking a supply cart. Bay 2 came alive with activity. Monitors, IV lines, the woman gasping, clutching, afraid. The EKG printed. Dr. Ashford grabbed it, studied the tracing. "Inferior STEMI," he announced. "ST elevation in leads 2, 3, and AVF. She needs the cath lab. Page cardiology. Get her on aspirin, Plavix, heparin drip. Let's move, people." Nurses scattered, following orders, the machine running smoothly. Vivian moved closer, positioned herself where she could see the monitors through the glass partition. The woman's blood pressure was dropping. 90/60, then 85/55. Dr. Ashford frowned. "Pressure's falling. Increase the fluids, wide open." A nurse adjusted the IV fluid pouring in. Blood pressure dropped further, 78/50. "Doctor," one of the nurses said quietly, "could this be right heart infarct? The inferior pattern? It's hypovolemic shock from the MY." Ashford cut her off. "Keep pushing fluids." Vivian's eyes narrowed. No, right ventricular infarction. The inferior wall STEMI pattern was classic, and right ventricular infarcts didn't respond to fluids. They needed different management. The right ventricle couldn't pump. Flooding it with volume would make things worse. The patient needed inotropic support. Medications to help the heart squeeze, not fluids. The blood pressure dropped to 70/45. The woman's eyes rolled back. "She's crashing," someone said. Vivian made a decision. She walked into Bay 2. "Doctor," she said, voice still quiet but carrying now, "the patient has right ventricular involvement. You can see it on the EKG. The ST elevation in lead 3 is greater than lead 2. She needs inotropes, not volume." Dr. Ashford's head snapped around. "What did you just say?" "Right ventricular infarct. The fluids are making her worse. You need to stop the IV and start dobutamine." The bay went quiet. Everyone staring. Dr. Ashford's face flushed. "Get out." "Doctor, the patient." "Get out of my ER bay." His voice sharp, cutting. "You're a janitor. You don't read EKGs. You don't question physicians. You clean floors and you stay silent. Security." A security guard appeared in the doorway. Young, uncomfortable. "Escort her out," Dr. Ashford ordered. The guard took Vivian's arm gently. "Ma'am, you need to come with me." Vivian looked at the patient, at the monitors, at the blood pressure still falling. Then she looked at Dr. Ashford. "If you don't change management in the next 2 minutes," she said quietly, "that woman will die." "Out!" The security guard pulled her away. Out of the bay, into the hallway. Through the glass, Vivian watched Dr. Ashford turn back to the patient, watched him continue pushing fluids. For 30 seconds, nothing changed. Then one of the senior nurses, the one who had defended Vivian earlier, spoke up. "Doctor, I think she might be right. The EKG does show." "Fine," Ashford snapped. "Fine. Stop the fluids. Hang dobutamine. 5 mics per kilo per minute. Happy?" The change was implemented. Vivian watched the monitors. 15 seconds, 30, 45. The blood pressure started to rise. 75/48, then 82/52, then 90/58. The woman's eyes opened, color returning to her face, breathing easier. "Pressure's improving," a nurse said, relief in her voice. Dr. Ashford stood very still, staring at the monitor, his jaw working. Then he turned, looked through the glass partition. Directly at Vivian. Their eyes met. In that moment something passed between them, recognition, understanding. He knew she had been right, knew she had saved his patient, knew she had just made him look foolish in front of his staff. He hated her for it. Vivian turned and walked away. At 2:15 a.m., the ambulance bay doors crashed open for the second time that night. "Trauma activation," the paramedic's voice cut through the relative calm. "Male, mid-30s, high-speed MVA, hypotensive, tachy, diminished breath, sounds left side." The gurney exploded through the doors, paramedics running. Patient on the backboard, collar, straps, blood everywhere. Dr. Ashford was already moving. This was different than the cardiac case. This was trauma, his specialty, his kingdom. "Bay 1, he shouted. "Transfer on my count. 1, 2, 3. The patient moved to the bed, hands everywhere, cutting clothes, attaching monitors, organized chaos. Vivian stood in the hallway. The security guard had left. She was supposed to be cleaning, supposed to stay away. She watched. The monitors came alive. Numbers in red. Alarms screaming. Blood pressure 75/40. Heart rate 140. Oxygen saturation 86% and dropping. "Fast exam," Ashford ordered. The ultrasound probe moved across the patient's abdomen, looking for free fluid, internal bleeding. "Negative," the tech said. "Chest X-ray." The portable machine wheeled in. Everyone stepped back. The image appeared on the screen. Vivian's breath caught. The mediastinum, the shadow in the center of the chest where the great vessels lived, was widened, enlarged, distorted. Aortic injury. The main artery carrying blood from the heart had been damaged in the crash, leaking, not ruptured yet, but it would be, any moment. And when it did, the patient would bleed out internally in seconds. This patient needed a vascular surgeon, needed an operating room, needed blood products and prayer. What he didn't need was what Dr. Ashford was about to order. "Pneumothorax," Ashford said, misreading the X-ray. "Left side collapsed lung. That's the hypotension. Prep for chest tube." No. Vivian's hands gripped the wall. Not a pneumothorax. The lung was fine. The problem was the aorta, and if Ashford put in a chest tube, the procedure would spike the blood pressure, stress the already damaged vessel. The aorta would rupture. The patient would die. She had to say something, but she had already challenged him once tonight. Already made him look bad. If she spoke up again, he would ignore her, would do the procedure out of spite, out of pride. She stood frozen, watching disaster unfold in slow motion. Dr. Ashford prepped the insertion site. Betadine on skin, scalpel unwrapped. The senior nurse, the same one who had spoken up about the cardiac patient, looked at the X-ray, frowned. "Doctor," she said hesitantly, "the mediastinum is fine," Ashford cut her off, his voice hard, brooking no argument. "We're treating the pneumothorax, period." He made the incision. Vivian closed her eyes. She heard the sounds, the clamp between ribs, the chest tube being threaded. Then the alarm. The blood pressure spiked. Catecholamines flooding the system, fight or flight. The damaged aorta couldn't take it. The tone changed, from steady beeping to the long continuous scream that meant only one thing: flatline. "He's coding," someone shouted. Compression started, hard and fast, counting aloud. Drugs pushed through IV lines. Vivian opened her eyes, watched through the glass. They worked for 12 minutes. At 2:30 a.m., Dr. Ashford called it. Time of death, 02:30. The silence after death was always strange. The bay a mess. Blood-soaked gauze, empty medication vials, the detritus of a failed rescue, the patient on the bed, chest open from the emergency thoracotomy they had performed, ribs spread with retractors, the stilled heart visible. Staff filed out quietly. No one spoke. No one made eye contact. Dr. Ashford at the sink, scrubbing blood from his hands, face carefully neutral, professional detachment. Vivian still in the hallway. She stood there a long time, watching the cleanup, watching the body being prepared for the morgue. Then she saw it. Dr. Ashford's hands, at the sink, as he dried them. They were shaking, just slightly, but unmistakably. The tremor of someone who had just made a mistake, who knew it, who was trying to process it, trying to bury it. He pulled out his phone, typed something. His jaw set, then he walked toward the administrative offices. Vivian watched him go. She knew what came next. At 2:45 a.m., Vivian was called to the director of nursing's office, the administrative wing on the second floor. The elevator moved with arthritic slowness. Hallways carpeted, quiet. Fluorescent lights dimmer here, more expensive, where the business of healthcare happened. Far from the blood and screaming, Director Patricia Monroe's office at the end of the hall, door open. Engaged, Director Monroe sat behind her desk. 58, gray hair in a practical bob, reading glasses on a chain. She had been a floor nurse for 20 years before administration. She knew what hospitals were, what they did to people. Dr. Ashford stood beside the desk, fresh white coat, composed, earnest, hands clasped in concerned professionalism. "Vivian," Director Monroe said. "Sit down." One chair in front of the desk. Vivian sat, hands folded in lap, back straight but shoulders hunched, still playing the part, still the frightened woman who mopped floors. "Do you know why you're here?" Monroe asked. "No, ma'am." Dr. Ashford shifted his weight. "Director Monroe, I want to be clear. I don't take pleasure in this, but we have a serious problem." He gestured to his tablet, pulled up notes. "Tonight Vivian has interfered with patient care twice. The first time, she entered an active treatment bay and contradicted my clinical judgment regarding a cardiac patient. The second time, she attempted to do the same during a trauma activation." "I was trying to help," Vivian said quietly. "You were practicing medicine without a license," Ashford countered, voice smooth, reasonable. "You questioned my orders in front of staff, created chaos during critical situations, and now," he paused, "a patient has died." Director Monroe removed her glasses, rubbed her eyes. "The trauma patient," she said. "Yes, and while I'm not saying Vivian caused his death, her interference created a distraction, made me question my assessment, delayed critical treatment." "That's not true," Vivian said. "I told you he had an aortic injury. You performed a procedure that ruptured it." The room went very quiet. Dr. Ashford's face flushed. "That is a slanderous accusation. It's documented," Vivian interrupted. Her voice still quiet, but something different in it now, something hard. "The X-ray clearly shows widened mediastinum. The chest tube caused a blood pressure spike. The autopsy will show aortic rupture. Everything I said would happen, happened." Ashford leaned forward. "Director, this is exactly the problem. She thinks she knows better than board-certified physicians. She thinks her outdated nursing knowledge from 30 years ago supersedes modern trauma protocols." "I have 20 years of emergency medicine experience," Vivian said. "Had," Ashford corrected. "Past tense. You took a custodial position. That means you clean. You don't diagnose. You don't treat. You certainly don't second-guess trauma surgeons." Director Monroe put her glasses back on, looked at Vivian for a long moment. "This isn't the first complaint I've received about you," she said. "Dr. Ashford has documented several incidents of you overstepping your role, commenting on patient care, questioning orders." "Because the orders were wrong," Vivian said. "That's not your determination to make." Monroe's voice was firm. "We have hierarchies for a reason, protocols, chain of command. You can't just bypass all of that because you think you know better." "Even when people die?" "Especially then." Monroe's voice rose slightly. Then she collected herself. "I'm sorry, Vivian, but I'm going to have to terminate your employment, effective immediately. Please surrender your ID badge." Vivian sat very still, then slowly reached up, unclipped the badge from her uniform, placed it on the desk. "I understand," she said. Dr. Ashford watched her carefully, eyes sharp, evaluating, making sure the threat had been neutralized. "For what it's worth," Monroe said, "I believe you meant well, but this is a teaching hospital. We can't have staff members undermining our physicians. I hope you understand." Vivian stood. She looked at Dr. Ashford, just looked at him. And in that moment, something passed between them, something unspoken. He saw something in her eyes that made his confidence waver, just a flicker. Then she turned and walked out. A security guard waited in the hallway, young, uncomfortable, cardboard box under his arm. "Ma'am," he said, "I need you to come with me." They rode the elevator down, to the basement, to the lockers, the break room, the places where invisible people kept invisible lives. Vivian's locker was 247. She opened it with a key on a lanyard around her neck. Inside wasn't much. Spare uniform, lunch bag, a photograph taped to the inside of the locker door. The security guard looked away. Privacy. The photograph was old, faded, creased from being folded too many times. 12 soldiers in desert camouflage, standing in front of a Humvee, Iraq's Anbar province visible in the background, everyone smiling. The particular smile of people who had survived something together, who had seen the worst and were still standing. Front row, third, from left. A woman, Younger than Vivian, 30 years younger, but recognizably her. Same eyes, same serious expression under the smile. Captain's bars on her collar, combat medic patch on her shoulder. And pinned to her chest, barely visible in the photograph's resolution, a small medal, silver star. Vivian looked at the photograph for a long moment, then took it down, placed it in the cardboard box, closed the locker. "I'm ready," she said. The walk through the hospital felt longer than it should. Back corridors, service hallways where patients never went, where the machinery of healthcare lived. Laundry carts, biohazard containers, the smell of industrial chemicals. They emerged through a side door into the parking lot. It was raining, not gentle Seattle rain, biblical downpour, turning the parking lot into rivers and lakes. Lightning flashed. Thunder followed. The security guard looked uncomfortable. "Do you need an umbrella?" "No," Vivian said. "Thank you." She took the cardboard box, stepped out into the rain. The security door locked behind her with a heavy metallic click. Vivian stood in the parking lot, rain soaked through her uniform in seconds, plastered hair to her skull. The cardboard box began disintegrating. The photograph inside would be ruined. She didn't move, just stood there. In the rain, in the dark, at 2:47 in the morning, alone. The hospital rose behind her, 8 stories of glass and steel, lit from within, a monument to healing, to science, to the triumph of human knowledge over suffering. Somewhere inside, Dr. Dominic Ashford was probably in the physician's lounge, having coffee, telling a joke, already forgetting the man who had died, already forgetting the janitor he had destroyed. Vivian's hands tightened on the box, the tremor gone. Her shoulders straightened, spine extended to full length. She stood at full height for the first time in 3 years. And in that moment, in the rain, in the darkness, Vivian Hartley stopped being the frightened woman who mopped floors. Something else rose to the surface, something that had been waiting, patient, quiet, for 11 years. Thunder rolled across the sky. Vivian smiled, not a pleasant smile. Then, from somewhere in the distance, a sound. At first, almost nothing. A ghost in the storm. Easy to miss. Easy to dismiss as thunder or wind or a passing truck on the nearby highway. But Vivian heard it. Her head turned, searching. The sound grew, low and rhythmic, a thrumming that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The rain on pavement began to vibrate. Vivian felt it first in her feet, then in her chest. A percussion matching her heartbeat, then exceeding it. The sound became a roar, and 2 black helicopters descended from the storm like angels of war. The helicopters had no markings. Matte black, no insignia, no registration numbers, no flags, nothing that would identify origin or purpose. They descended through rain like machines built in classified facilities where questions weren't asked and answers weren't given. The rotor wash hit the parking lot with hurricane force. Water exploded upward in sheets. Cars rocked on suspension. Loose debris tumbled across asphalt, the sound deafening, not just noise, pressure, a physical force pushing against eardrums and rattling teeth. Vivian stood perfectly still. Rain that had been falling on her now blown sideways. The cardboard box disintegrated completely, contents scattered. The photograph of her old unit tumbled across wet pavement and disappeared under a parked sedan. She didn't chase it. Her eyes locked on the helicopters, Black Hawks, modified. The kind of modifications that didn't appear in any public specification sheet. The kind that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. The kind that existed in the overlap between military necessity and congressional plausible deniability. The first helicopter touched down 30 feet from where she stood. The second landed parallel, creating a corridor of rotor wash and noise and barely controlled violence. Before skids fully settled on pavement, side doors were sliding open. Men emerged, not men. Soldiers, rangers. Vivian recognized them instantly, not by uniforms. though those were distinctive enough, multicam, plate carriers loaded with ammunition and medical supplies, and tools for ending human life efficiently. Helmets with night vision mounts, weapons at low ready. But what identified them wasn't equipment. It was the way they moved, fluid, economical, every action purposeful, no wasted motion. They flowed out of aircraft like water, like violence made liquid, spreading into defensive perimeter without needing to communicate, without needing to think. Years of training made these movements autonomic, instinctive. 6 men from each helicopter, 12 total. They ignored rain, ignored cars, ignored everything except assigned sectors of fire and potential threats. Then, a 13th figure stepped out of the lead helicopter, older than the others, 50-something, face weathered by decades of sun and stress. Gray hair cut high and tight. Same multicam as his men, but bearing different. Someone who had stopped carrying a rifle himself because he was now responsible for the men who did. Colonel James Hawthorne. No rank insignia, no name tape, nothing that would identify him in a photograph. But authority radiated from him like heat from summer asphalt. His eyes swept the parking lot, scanning, evaluating, processing. His gaze passed over Vivian, then stopped, came back. He looked at her for exactly 2 seconds, then stepped forward, out of rotor wash, into rain. Boots striking pavement with purpose. "Clear the area," he said, voice not loud but carrying, the voice of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Rangers responded immediately, spreading out, creating perimeter, hands on weapons, eyes scanning windows and roof lines and cars for threats that probably didn't exist, but might. Because in their world, the difference between probably and might was measured in body bags. Colonel Hawthorne walked directly toward Vivian. She stood there, still soaked, still wearing custodial uniform, gray hair plastered to head, looking exactly like what she was supposed to be, a fired janitor in the rain. Hawthorne stopped 3 feet from her. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then Hawthorne's right hand came up, slowly, deliberately, and he saluted. Not casual. The kind of salute that meant something. Crisp. Precise. The salute you gave someone who had earned it, who had bled for it. "Captain Hartley," he said. Vivian's jaw tightened. She didn't return the salute. Couldn't. Civilian clothes. No longer in chain of command. No longer part of that world. "I'm not a captain anymore, Colonel," she said quietly. "Once a ranger," Hawthorne said, "always a ranger." Behind him, the other soldiers had completed their perimeter. They stood in rain, unmoving, professional, waiting. Hawthorne lowered his salute. "We have a situation," he said, "and we need Valkyrie." The name hit Vivian like a physical blow. Valkyrie, her call sign, from another life, from the person she used to be before she decided mopping floors and being invisible was safer than being who she actually was. "I don't use that name anymore," she said. "I know." Hawthorne's face grim. "I know you retired. I know you wanted out. I know what happened in Mosul, but I wouldn't be here if this wasn't critical." From inside the hospital came a sound, muffled, distant, but unmistakable. A gunshot, then another, then the sharp crack of automatic weapons fire. Every ranger reacted, weapons coming up, bodies dropping into firing stances, scanning for source. The sound coming from inside Memorial Grace Hospital. Hawthorne keyed the radio on his chest. "Whiskey 6 to all elements, shots fired inside the hospital. Status check on primary." A voice crackled back through his earpiece. "Negative contact with primary. Asset is inside. Repeat, primary is inside the building." Hawthorne looked at Vivian. 45 minutes ago," he said, "we received intel that Senator Whitmore's son was brought to this hospital tonight. Car accident. Minor injuries. He was supposed to be in and out. Routine. But 30 minutes ago, an individual entered the building through the main entrance, armed. Security footage shows he went straight to the 4th floor. We believe he's taken hostages." Another burst of gunfire echoed from inside. Vivian's eyes locked on the hospital. Mind already working, already calculating. SWAT? She asked. 10 minutes out, maybe 8 if they push it, but we can't wait. Hawthorne moved closer. Carson Whitmore is 24 years old, Marine Corps lieutenant, just back from deployment. Good kid. And he's trapped in there with an active shooter. Why me? Vivian asked. You have a dozen Rangers standing right here. Because we just received updated intelligence. Hawthorne pulled a tablet from a pouch on his vest, showed her the screen. Floor plan of the hospital, 4th floor, trauma ward. Red dots marked hostile positions, blue dots marked hostages. The shooter has rigged the oxygen storage room with explosives. C4, at least 20 pounds based on package size, captured on security footage. If we breach with a tactical team, he detonates. The entire wing goes up. Oxygen-fed fireball. Everyone dies. Carson dies. Hawthorne swiped to another screen. A photograph. Silas Brennan, 42 years old, former mechanical engineer. Unremarkable face. The kind of man you wouldn't notice in a crowd. 3 years ago, his wife died in this hospital. Surgical complications. He blames the hospital, blames the doctor. Tonight, he came back for revenge. Another swipe. Security camera footage. Time-stamped 2:15 a.m., 30 minutes ago, just after the MVA patient had arrived. It showed Brennan entering the 4th floor, carrying a duffel bag, wearing a long coat. In his hands, an AR-15 pattern rifle. The footage showed him walking past the nurse's station, firing a shot into the ceiling, people diving for cover, then forcing everyone into the hallway. Hands up, terror on faces. And there on screen was Dr. Dominic Ashford, on his knees, hands behind head, looking up at the gunman with an expression Vivian had never seen on his face before. Fear. We need someone who can go in quiet, Hawthorne continued. Someone with medical training who won't be flagged as threat. Someone who can extract the asset while we negotiate. Someone who can assess the explosive device and give us intelligence. He looked directly at Vivian. We need someone who's done this before. In Ramadi, in Fallujah, in Mosul. Someone who's extracted wounded men from hot zones while taking fire. Someone who's kept people alive when there was no reason they should have survived. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Inside the hospital, more gunfire. I was fired 30 minutes ago, she said finally. I know. I'm not on staff. I have no authority, no access. I know. I'm 56 years old. I haven't been in a combat zone in 11 years. Hawthorne smiled. Not happy. Captain Hartley, he said. I've read your file, all of it, including the parts still classified. I know what you did in Mosul. I know about the ambush. I know you kept 23 Rangers alive for 9 hours under sustained fire while waiting for extract. I know you performed field surgery with equipment you improvised from a fucking first aid kit and a Leatherman multi-tool. I know you earned that silver star, and I know you could do it again right now if you had to. He stepped closer. I'm not asking because you're the only option. I'm asking because you're the best option, and that kid in there deserves the best we've got. Vivian looked at the hospital, counted floors, identified windows, calculated breach points and egress routes, her mind already working in old patterns, patterns she had spent 3 years trying to forget. There's something else, she said quietly. Hawthorne frowned. What? The patient in room 408, Carson Whitmore. He came in with minor chest contusion, but I saw his vitals an hour ago. He's developing tension pneumothorax, air building up in his chest cavity. If it's not decompressed soon, his lung will collapse completely. His heart will stop. How long? Could be minutes. Could be an hour. Without monitoring, we're blind. Hawthorne's jaw set. Then we move now. Vivian reached up, pulled the elastic from her hair, let it fall loose, shook out the water. When she looked up, her posture had changed, shoulders back, spine straight, head high. The hunched janitor gone. What stood in her place was someone else entirely. What's the ROE? She asked. Her voice different now, harder, clearer, command voice. Protect the asset, minimize casualties. But if it comes down to a choice between Carson Whitmore and anyone else, including yourself, you bring that kid home. Vivian nodded once. I need a vest, radio, medical kit, and something to defend myself with if this goes sideways. Hawthorne gestured. 2 Rangers approached, carrying a loadout already prepared. They knew she was coming before she did. Plate carrier, already sized for her, lighter than what the men wore but still rated for rifle rounds. Radio harness, earpiece, throat mic, a medical pack that probably cost more than most ambulances, and a pistol, Glock 19, 9mm, standard issue. They handed it to her, grip first. Vivian checked it automatically. Press check. Confirmed round in chamber. Dropped magazine. Counted rounds. 15 plus 1. Reinserted magazine. Racked slide. Safe. The motion's automatic. Muscle memory from 10,000 repetitions. She strapped on the vest, adjusted straps, secured the medical pack. One ranger handed her a small device. Inch square, black plastic. Video relay, he said. Stick it somewhere with sight line. We'll have eyes. She pocketed it. Hawthorne pulled a document from his vest. Folded. Official looking. This is an executive action authorization, signed 3 hours ago. It reinstates your commission, grants you federal authority superseding all local law enforcement, and indemnifies you for any actions taken during this operation. He held it out. Vivian took it, unfolded it. The letterhead real, signature real, seal real. She was no longer fired. She was activated. Welcome back, Captain, Hawthorne said. Vivian folded the document, put it in her vest. I need 5 minutes to recon the building layout. You have 3, she smiled. Then I better move fast. The side entrance to Memorial Grace Hospital was locked. Vivian stood in front of it for exactly 4 seconds, then pulled a small toolkit from her vest. Lockpicking wasn't part of standard Ranger training, but it was part of her training. The classified part. The lock yielded in 18 seconds. She was inside. The service corridor empty. Dim, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The smell familiar. Antiseptic and floor wax, and that particular scent all hospitals had. The smell of controlled desperation. Vivian moved quickly, not running. Running attracted attention. She walked with purpose, like someone who belonged, someone on a mission. The stairwell at the end of the corridor. She took stairs 2 at a time, counting floors. 1, 2, 3, 4th floor. She stopped at the door. Put her ear against it. Silence. No, not silence. Something. Muffled voices. Sound of someone crying. Quiet. Suppressed. She keyed her radio, whispered. Valkyrie to Whiskey 6. I'm at 4th floor entry, preparing to make entry. Hawthorne's voice came back immediately. Copy. SWAT on approach. ETA 6 minutes. Recommend you wait for backup. Negative. Asset doesn't have 6 minutes. Valkyrie, I'm going in. She clicked off before he could respond. Vivian tested the door handle. Unlocked. Of course. Fire code. You couldn't lock stairwell doors from inside. She drew the Glock, held it at low ready, finger outside trigger guard, and pushed the door open. The hallway beyond was a nightmare. Overhead lights still on, but several shot out. Sparks falling from severed wiring. Floor covered in broken glass and ceiling tiles. Walls pocked with bullet holes. And in the center of the hallway, arranged like pieces on a chessboard, were the hostages, 9 of them, sitting on floor, hands zip-tied behind backs, faces white with terror. She recognized some, nurses she had worked with, a respiratory therapist, an orderly, and Natalie Pierce, the young nurse who had mocked her, now sitting there, tears streaming down her face, zip ties cutting into her wrists, and Dr. Dominic Ashford at the front of the group. Closest to the nurse's station where Silas Brennan stood with his rifle. Brennan exactly as he had appeared in the photograph, unremarkable, average height, average build, the kind of man you would forget 5 minutes after meeting. Except for his eyes. His eyes were wrong. They had the flat, dead quality of someone who had already accepted this, ended only one way. Someone who had nothing left to lose. The most dangerous kind of person. He was pacing, talking, gesturing with the rifle. 3 years, he was saying, voice rough, raw, like he had been screaming. 3 years I tried to get someone to listen. 3 years I tried to get justice through the system, letters, lawsuits, complaints. And what did I get? Nothing. Nobody cared. Nobody listened. Dr. Ashford was shaking his head. Please, I don't know what you're... Mary Brennan! The name came out as a roar. Your patient. Room 412, 3 years ago. You were drunk. The nurses smelled it on you. Ashford's face went pale. Brennan saw it, saw the recognition, the guilt. Yeah, Brennan said softly. You remember now, don't you? Vivian pressed against the wall, 15 feet from nearest hostage, 25 feet from Brennan. Angle bad, too many hostages in line of fire. She couldn't take the shot even if she wanted. She needed to move closer. She scanned the hallway, looking for options. There, a supply cart, overturned against the wall, big enough for cover, 10 feet closer. She moved, silent, low, every footfall placed carefully, avoiding broken glass. She reached the cart, pressed herself against it. From this angle, she could see more. The nurse's station, patient rooms lining the hallway, and there at the far end, room 408. Door closed, but through the small window, she could see someone inside. Young, male, lying on a hospital bed. Carson Whitmore. He wasn't moving. Vivian's jaw set. She pulled the video relay device from her pocket, activated it, placed it carefully on top of the overturned cart, angled toward Brennan. Now Hawthorne and his team could see what she was seeing. She keyed her radio, whispered so quietly the words were barely breath. Visual on primary, room 408. Subject appears unconscious. Unknown medical status. Hostile is mobile. Armed with AR platform rifle and sidearm. Explosives visible in duffel bag near nurse's station. Estimated 20-pound C4, radio detonator visible on hostile's belt. Hawthorne's voice. Copy all. Can you reach primary? Vivian studied the layout. Room 408 was 30 feet away, past the nurse's station, past Brennan, past all the hostages. To get there, she would have to cross completely open ground. Impossible, unless... Her eyes fell on Natalie Pierce. The young nurse was looking around, not panicking anymore. Observing, trying to understand, trying to find a way out. And then Natalie's eyes found Vivian. The recognition was instant. Shock. Confusion. The janitor she had mocked was here, in tactical gear, armed, looking like someone completely different. Vivian put a finger to her lips. Silent. Natalie's eyes widened, but she gave the smallest nod, understanding. Vivian gestured, subtle, pointed to Brennan, then to herself, then made a distracting motion. Natalie understood. The young nurse took a deep breath, then suddenly jerked, gasped loudly. I can't breathe, she said, voice panicked. I can't. I'm having a panic attack. I can't. Brennan's head snapped toward her. Shut up. I can't breathe. Natalie was hyperventilating now, convincing. Please, the zip ties. They're too tight. My hands. Brennan stepped toward her, rifle lowering slightly, focused on the noise, the disruption. I said shut up. And Vivian moved. Not toward room 408. Not yet. Toward the oxygen storage room where the bomb was planted. She covered the distance in 4 seconds. Silent. Low. Professional. The door was closed, but not locked. She eased it open, slipped inside. The duffel bag sat in the corner, unzipped. The brick of C4 clearly visible. Blasting cap inserted, wired to a receiver unit. A small red light blinked slowly. Standby mode. Vivian studied the setup. Professional. Clean. Brennan knew what he was doing. This wasn't improvised. This was planned. But there was something else. A second device, hidden under the first receiver, hardwired, a failsafe. She leaned closer, examined it carefully. A dead man's switch. Wireless. Monitoring Brennan's heartbeat through a sensor somewhere on his body. If his heart stopped, the bomb detonated automatically, which meant they couldn't kill him. Couldn't even knock him unconscious too hard. They had to keep him alive and calm until EOD arrived. Vivian keyed her radio, whispered urgently, "Whiskey 6, the bomb has a dead man switch. Heartbeat monitor. If hostile's heart stops, device detonates. Do not engage lethal force. Repeat, do not engage lethal." Hawthorne's voice, "Copy, SWAT is 2 minutes out. Can you disable?" Vivian looked at the device. Complex, military grade, the kind that required specialized training to disarm. "Negative. Need EOD, but I can delay detonation if needed." "How?" "By keeping him talking." She backed out of the oxygen room, closed the door carefully, returned to her position behind the supply cart. Brennan had moved back to the nurse's station. Natalie had calmed down. The crisis passed. But now Vivian had intelligence and a plan. She holstered the Glock, stood up, and stepped out into the open hallway. Silas Brennan's head snapped toward her. The rifle came up, centered on her chest. "Don't move!" he shouted. Vivian stopped, raised her hand slowly, palms out, unthreatening. Every hostage turned to look, eyes wide. Some with recognition, some with confusion. "Doctor." Ashford's mouth fell open. "Vivian?" he whispered. Natalie Pierce stared. The transformation complete. The hunched janitor gone, replaced by this. Brennan stepped forward, eyes narrowed, trying to process. A woman, middle-aged, wearing plate carrier and tactical gear, armed, but not SWAT, not police, something else. "Who are you?" Brennan demanded. Vivian kept her hands up, kept her voice calm, steady. "I'm a nurse," she said. "I'm here to check on the patients. Make sure they're okay." Brennan laughed, sharp, bitter sound. "A nurse? In body armor? It's been a complicated night." Brennan's finger moved to the trigger. "You think I'm stupid? You're with them, with the police, with SWAT." "I'm not with anyone." Vivian took a step forward and slow, careful. "I work here, or I did, until about an hour ago, before I got fired for trying to save a patient that a doctor killed through negligence." She looked directly at Dr. Ashford as she said it. Brennan's eyes flickered between her and Ashford. Processing. "You got fired?" he asked. "For telling the truth, for trying to stop a doctor from making a mistake. Same as you. Same as Mary." Brennan's jaw clenched. The rifle stayed up, but his finger moved back outside trigger guard. "You knew Mary?" "No," Vivian said honestly. "But I know what it's like to watch someone die because a doctor was too arrogant to listen. I know what it's like to be powerless, to scream into the void and have nobody hear you." She took another step forward, 20 feet now. "I know what it's like to want justice, to want someone to pay for what they did." Brennan was trembling. The rifle shook in his hands. "He killed her," Brennan said, voice breaking. "He was drunk, he made a mistake, and she died, and nobody cared, nobody did anything. He's still here, still working, still killing people." "I know," Vivian said softly. She looked at Ashford. The doctor staring at her, face a mixture of confusion and hope and terror. He thought she was here to save him. He was wrong. "Dr. Ashford has a pattern," Vivian continued, "of negligence, of arrogance, of putting his ego ahead of patient safety. Tonight, alone, he killed a patient. Misdiagnosed an aortic injury, performed a procedure that ruptured the vessel. The patient bled out in minutes." Ashford's face went white. "That's not—" "It's documented," Vivian said. "The X-ray, the procedure notes, the time of death, everything." She looked back at Brennan. "Let me check on the patients, make sure they're stable. Then you and I can talk about what happens next, about how to make sure Dr. Ashford actually faces consequences for what he's done." Brennan stared at her. For a long moment the hallway completely silent. Then slowly he lowered the rifle. 5 minutes, he said. "You check the patients, then you come back here. Any tricks, any signals. I start shooting. Understand?" "I understand." Vivian lowered her hands. She walked past Brennan, close enough to touch, close enough to take him down if she wanted. But she didn't. She walked past the hostages, past Dr. Ashford, who was looking at her with an expression almost pleading. She walked to room 408, opened the door, and stepped inside. Carson Whitmore was lying on the bed, unconscious, skin pale, clammy, breathing shallow and rapid. Vivian moved to his side. Checked pulse, thready, fast, around 135. She pulled a stethoscope from her medical pack, listened to his chest. Breath sounds diminished on the left side, significantly diminished. She palpated his neck, looking for tracheal deviation. There. The trachea pushed slightly to the right. Tension pneumothorax, air leaking into his chest cavity from the car accident, building up pressure, collapsing the lung, pushing heart and great vessels to one side. If it wasn't relieved soon, his heart would stop. He had maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 if lucky. Vivian pulled out her radio. Whiskey 6, this is Valkyrie. Primary has tension pneumothorax. Needs immediate needle decompression. I can perform the procedure, but I need time. Hawthorne's voice. How much time? 3 minutes, maybe 4. SWAT is 90 seconds out. Not fast enough. If they breach, Brennan detonates. Everyone dies, including primary. I need to do this now. Silence. Then, what do you need? Keep Brennan talking. Keep him distracted. And pray he doesn't get nervous. Copy. Initiating negotiation contact now. Vivian moved to the door, looked out through the window. Brennan still at nurse's station, still holding rifle, but he was looking toward main doors now, toward sound of sirens outside. SWAT was arriving. She had minutes, maybe less. Vivian locked the door from inside, pulled the medical pack off her back, and got to work. The needle decompression kit contained everything she needed. A 14-gauge catheter, longer than normal IV needle, thick enough to allow air to escape from chest cavity, sharp enough to penetrate skin and muscle and intercostal space between ribs. Carson Whitmore still unconscious. That was good. This was going to hurt. Vivian positioned herself on his left side, located the second intercostal space, just below clavicle, just lateral to sternum. The anatomical landmark branded into her memory from 1,000 training iterations. She prepped the site. Antiseptic wipe, cold against skin. Behind her, through the door, she could hear Brennan shouting, responding to something the SWAT negotiator was saying over a bullhorn. She had seconds. Vivian positioned the needle, angled it over the top of the third rib. You always went over the rib, not under. The neurovascular bundle ran under the rib. Hit that and you could cause more damage than you were fixing. She pushed. Needle pierced skin, muscle, fascia. Then sudden release of resistance. She was in. A hiss of air escaped from the catheter. Trapped air, finding release, decompressing. Carson Whitmore gasped, a sudden, involuntary breath. His eyes flew open. Vivian placed a hand on his chest, keeping him still. Easy, she whispered. Don't move. You're okay. You're safe. Just breathe. Carson's eyes focused on her. Confusion, fear. Who? I'm a friend. Your father sent me. We're getting you out of here. She secured the catheter, taped it in place. The hissing continued, air escaping, pressure normalizing. Carson's breathing already easier, color returning to face. Vivian checked his pulse, dropping. 115, 105, stabilizing. There's a man outside, Carson said, voice weak. With a gun, he's going to... I know, but you're going to be okay, I promise. Carson looked at her, really looked, and something in his expression changed. Recognition of some kind. Not of her specifically, but of what she represented. He was a Marine. He knew what a tactical vest meant, what confidence in her movements meant. You're not just a nurse, he said. Vivian smiled. No, she said, I'm not. Outside, the shouting was getting louder. Brennan's voice. I see your snipers. I see them on the roof. You think I'm stupid? Negotiator. Mr. Brennan, nobody thinks you're stupid. We just want to talk. We want to resolve this peacefully. Brennan, there is no peaceful resolution, not until he pays, not until everyone knows what he did. Vivian moved to the door, looked out through the window. Brennan agitated now, pacing, the rifle swinging in arcs. His hand kept moving to detonator on his belt. This was deteriorating fast. She keyed her radio. Whiskey 6. Primary is stabilized, but hostile is escalating. If we don't act now, he's going to blow the charges. Hawthorne, SWAT has authorization to take the shot if they get clear line. Negative. Too many hostages, too much risk. And the dead man's switch. If you kill him, the bomb goes off anyway. I'm going back out there. Valkyrie, what are you planning? Vivian looked at Carson, then at the medical pack, then at the Glock on her hip. I'm going to end this, she said. She clicked off before Hawthorne could object, turned to Carson. Stay here. Stay quiet. No matter what you hear, do not come out of this room. Understand? Carson nodded. Vivian unlocked the door, stepped back out into the hallway. And this time, when Silas Brennan turned to look at her, she wasn't raising her hands. She was walking straight toward him. We need to talk, she said. And there was something in her voice that made even a man with nothing to lose hesitate. Silas Brennan's finger tightened on the trigger, but he didn't fire. Something in Vivian's eyes stopped him. The absolute absence of fear. The calm that came from someone who had walked through fire before and knew exactly what waited on the other side. I said we need to talk, Vivian repeated. She was 10 feet from him now, close enough to see the sweat on his face, the tremor in his hands that wasn't fear but exhaustion, adrenaline crash, the body's way of saying it couldn't maintain this level of stress much longer. About what? Brennan asked, his voice hoarse, raw. About Mary. The name hit him like a physical blow. His face crumpled. The rifle dipped slightly. What about her? Vivian glanced at the hostages, at Dr. Ashford kneeling there, at Natalie Pierce watching with wide eyes. Not here, she said. Just you and me, by the nurses' station, away from them. Brennan hesitated, then nodded. They moved together, Vivian leading, Brennan following. The rifle never quite pointing away from her, but not directly at her either. A strange dance of trust and threat. When they reached the nurses' station, Vivian turned, leaned against the counter, casual, like they were colleagues having a conversation. Not a hostage negotiation, not a standoff. Why did Mary die? She asked quietly. Brennan's face twisted. You know why. Ashford was drunk. He made a mistake during surgery. The bypass failed. She bled out. I know that's what you believe, Vivian said, but I've been looking into it. I've been documenting Ashford's cases for 3 years, and I've found something. She reached slowly into her vest, pulled out a folded piece of paper, the executive action authorization Hawthorne had given her. But Brennan couldn't know that. To him, it was just a document. She unfolded it, showed him. It was blank on the side facing him. This is Mary's insurance policy, Vivian said. It was a lie, but a necessary one. The life insurance you took out on her, $2 million. Do you remember when you took it out? Brennan stared at the paper. We needed it for our daughter's college fund, for the future. You took it out 2 weeks before Mary's surgery, Vivian said quietly. 2 weeks. And the surgery wasn't emergency. It was elective, scheduled. You chose the date. Brennan's hands started shaking. That doesn't mean... You researched Dr. Ashford. I found your search history in the hospital's visitor Wi-Fi logs. You looked up his credentials, his history. You found articles about his mistakes, about his drinking, and then you specifically requested him as Mary's surgeon. No, Brennan shaking his head. No, I would never... I'm not saying you consciously wanted her to die, Vivian said, her voice gentle now, understanding. But some part of you knew. Some part of you chose the surgeon most likely to make a mistake. And then you doubled the insurance policy, and then... Brennan's knees buckled. He sank down, the rifle clattering to the floor, his hands covering his face. I loved her, he sobbed. I loved her. I would never... I know, Vivian said. But grief does strange things to people. makes them rationalize, makes them build narratives, and the truth is always more complicated than we want it to be. She looked at Dr. Ashford. The doctor was staring at them, listening to every word. But that doesn't excuse what he did, Vivian had continued. Ashford was drunk. He did make a mistake, and Mary did die because of it. That part is true. What you did, consciously or unconsciously, doesn't change the fact that he's a negligent physician who should never touch another patient. Ashford's face had gone white. Vivian turned to him, looked directly at him. "You've been waiting for this moment, haven't you, doctor?" she asked. "For 3 years, waiting for someone to call you out, waiting for the truth to finally catch up." Ashford opened his mouth, closed it. His eyes were wet. He started, then stopped. The hallway was silent except for Brennan's sobbing. And then Dr. Ashford did something Vivian hadn't expected. He spoke the truth. "He's right," Ashford said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was drunk. I killed her." Every eye turned to him. "I've been drunk for half my surgeries in the past 5 years," Ashford continued, words tumbling out now, like a dam breaking. "My hands shake every morning until I have a drink. I've been functional, mostly. But Mary Brennan," tears ran down his face. "I knew something was wrong during the procedure. I felt it. But I was too proud to call for help, too scared someone would smell the vodka, so I pushed through, and she died. And I let everyone think it was unavoidable complications." He looked at Vivian. "You knew, didn't you? That's why you documented everything. You were building a case." Vivian nodded slowly. "And tonight," Ashford continued, "the trauma patient, the aortic injury, you tried to tell me, and I killed him too, because I was too arrogant to listen." He turned to Brennan. "I'm sorry," Ashford said. "I'm so sorry. You're right. I should pay. I should lose everything. I should—" The words choked off. Brennan looked up at him, face ravaged by tears, by 3 years of grief and rage, and now this terrible knowledge that maybe he had been complicit in his own tragedy. "What do we do now?" Brennan asked quietly, not to Ashford, to Vivian. Before she could answer, the lights went out. The emergency lighting kicked in immediately. Dim red glow, just enough to see shapes, shadows. "Power cut," Hawthorne's voice came through Vivian's earpiece. "SWAT's breaching in 30 seconds. Get down." But Vivian was already moving, because Brennan was moving too, scrambling for the rifle he had dropped, hand reaching for the detonator on his belt. "No!" Vivian lunged. She hit Brennan in a tackle. They went down together, slid across the wet floor. The rifle skittered away. Brennan's hand closed around the detonator. Vivian grabbed his wrist, twisted, using leverage instead of strength, a technique burned into muscle memory from hundreds of hours of combatives training. Brennan cried out. The detonator fell from his grip. Vivian kicked it, sent it sliding across the floor, away from both of them, and then Brennan's other hand was around her throat, squeezing. Vivian's vision tunneled, black spots dancing. She brought her hands up, not to claw at his grip. That never worked. Instead, she drove her thumbs into the pressure points at the inside of his elbows. Brennan grunted, grip loosening slightly. Vivian brought her knee up into his solar plexus. Not hard enough to cause real damage, not hard enough to stop his heart and trigger the dead man's switch, just hard enough to break his hold. She rolled away, gasping, throat burning. Brennan was on his hands and knees, trying to reach the detonator. Vivian got there first, grabbed it, threw it as hard as she could down the hallway. It clattered against the far wall, harmless. But Brennan wasn't giving up. He pushed himself to his feet, charged at her, no technique now, just raw desperation. Vivian sidestepped, let his momentum carry him past, stuck out her foot. Brennan tripped, went down hard. His head bounced off the tile with a sickening crack. He lay still. Vivian checked his pulse. Still beating. Strong. The dead man's switch wouldn't trigger, but he was unconscious. She looked up. The hostages were staring at her. In the red emergency lighting, she looked like something from another world, hair wild, eyes fierce, moving with a precision and violence that didn't match the janitor they had known. Natalie Pierce's expression was awe. Dr. Ashford's was fear. And then the main doors exploded inward. Flashbang grenades. The world turned white and noise. Disorientation. SWAT poured through. Black helmets, ballistic shields, M4 carbines. Get down! Get down! The hostages dropped flat, hands over heads. Vivian remained standing, hands visible, non-threatening. A SWAT officer pointed his rifle at her. "On the ground." "Captain Vivian Hartley," she said calmly. "Federal authorization. Check with your commander." The officer hesitated, keyed his radio. A moment later, "Copy, stand down, she's authorized." The rifle lowered. SWAT moved past her, securing Brennan, cutting zip ties, evacuating hostages. "Clear. Hallway secure. Hostages accounted for." Vivian stood there, breathing hard, adrenaline starting to crash. And then she smelled it. Smoke. Not from flashbangs, something else. Chemical. Coming from down the hall. Room 402, the storage room where someone, probably Brennan, had set a secondary device. Not a bomb. Something simpler. A fire. "Fire!" someone shouted. "We have fire in room 402. The sprinkler system activated. Water pouring from ceiling. But too late. The fire had found something accelerant-soaked, something that burned hot and fast despite the water. Black smoke billowed into the hallway. SWAT was already moving, evacuating hostages, dragging them toward exits. Vivian counted 9 hostages being evacuated, plus Brennan, plus Carson, in room 408. That was everyone. Except, "Wait," she said. "How many patients were on this floor?" A nurse looked at her, soaked from sprinklers, shaking. 12. We had 12 patients admitted." "Where are they?" "The rooms. We couldn't move them. Some are post-surgical. Some are on ventilators. We couldn't—" Vivian was already moving, running down the hallway, into the smoke, into the heat. "Hey!" A SWAT officer grabbed for her. Missed. "You can't go in there." But she was already gone. The smoke was thick. Vivian pulled her shirt up over nose and mouth. Didn't help much. The acrid chemical taste coated her throat, made her eyes water, made breathing feel like inhaling broken glass. She moved low, below the thermal layer, where air was slightly clearer. Room 403, empty. Patient already evacuated, room 404, elderly woman, awake, terrified, trying to get out of bed but tangled in IV lines. "Stay down," Vivian ordered. She disconnected IVs, not gently. No time for gentle. Grabbed the woman under arms, started pulling her toward the door. The woman was heavy, dead weight, not helping, too scared to coordinate. Vivian's shoulders screamed, back protested. She was 56 years old and dragging a 160-pound woman across tile while smoke filled her lungs and heat beat against her skin. She got the woman to the hallway. A firefighter appeared, full gear, oxygen mask. He took the patient, disappeared back toward the stairwell. Vivian went back in. Room 405, empty. Room 406, young man, post-appendectomy, unconscious from pain medication. Vivian checked breathing. Regular, stable, disconnected monitors. Grabbed the top sheet from his bed, rolled him onto it, made a sled, dragged him into hallway. Wet floor helped, less friction. Pulled him 20 feet. Another firefighter took over. Room 407, elderly man, confused, trying to walk but disoriented by smoke. Vivian grabbed his arm. "Come with me, now." Half led, half dragged him out. The heat building, fire spreading, sprinklers losing the battle. Room 409, woman in traction, legs suspended, hardware drilled into bone. She couldn't be moved without risking permanent damage. "Please," the woman begged, "please don't leave me." Vivian looked at traction setup, looked at fire advancing down a hallway, looked back at the woman. "I'm not leaving you," she said. She grabbed bolt cutters from a maintenance cart someone had abandoned. Cut the traction wires. The woman screamed as her leg dropped. Pain must have been incredible, but pain meant alive. Vivian got her arms under the woman's shoulders, started dragging. They made it 5 feet before the ceiling collapsed. Not the whole ceiling, just a section. Acoustic tiles and support beams and wiring. Burning. Falling. Vivian tried to dodge, tried to protect the patient. The beam caught her right shoulder. Impact massive, like being hit by a car. Her shoulder exploded in pain. Something separated, something tore. Joint dislocated. With a wet pop she felt more than heard. Her arm went numb. She fell, landed on her back. Wind knocked out. Couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The patient was screaming. The fire was roaring. And Vivian's right arm hung uselessly at her side. She tried to lift it. Nothing. Muscles wouldn't respond. Shoulder dislocated, maybe broken, maybe both. She still had her left arm. It would have to be enough. Pain is information. Information is actionable. Ignore the pain. Focus on the objective. The Ranger Creed, burned into her soul 11 years ago. Still there. Still driving her. Vivian grabbed the patient with her left hand. Started dragging again. One-armed, slower. Each pull agony. Shoulder grinding bone against bone, sending white-hot pain signals screaming up her spine. She ignored it. 10 feet. 5 feet. Hands grabbed the patient, pulled her away. "We got her! We got her!" Someone trying to help Vivian up. She pushed them away. "More patients," she gasped. "Room 410. Room 412. Ma'am, you're injured. More patients." She staggered back into the smoke. Room 410, 10-year-old boy, Tyler, recovering from a splenectomy, awake, crying, terrified. "Hey," Vivian said, tried to make her voice calm, hide the pain. "Tyler, right?" The boy nodded. "I need you to be brave. Can you do that?" Another nod. "Climb on my back, hold on tight, don't let go no matter what." Tyler scrambled onto her back, wrapped arms around her neck, locked legs around her waist. Vivian stood. The weight pressed down on her dislocated shoulder. She almost blacked out from pain. Almost. She walked, not fast, not steady, but forward, and step, step, step. The hallway was an inferno now. Walls burning, floor burning, air itself seemed to be burning. She couldn't see through smoke, couldn't breathe, couldn't feel anything except pain and heat, and Tyler's small hands clutching her neck. She kept walking, and then she couldn't. Her path blocked. Ceiling collapsed completely. A wall of burning debris, no way through. They were trapped. Vivian looked around, trying to think through pain and smoke and oxygen deprivation. The window. Room 410's window was behind her, 10 feet back. She turned, stumbled, made it to the room, window thick, reinforced, anti-suicide measure designed not to break. Vivian grabbed an oxygen tank from the corner with her left hand, swung it at the window. It bounced off, swung again, harder. Using muscles she didn't know she still had. A crack appeared. Again. The crack spread. Again. Window shattered. Wind rushed in, feeding the fire, making it worse, but also giving them air. Oxygen. Vivian gasped, filled her lungs, looked out. 4 stories down, concrete parking lot, certain death. Behind her, fire coming through the door. Seconds left. She looked down again, searching for options. There. A drainage pipe, running down the side of the building. Old iron. 3 feet to the left of the window. It would have to do. "Tyler," she said, "I need you to trust me." The boy crying. "I want my mom." "I know, and you're going to see her, I promise. But right now, I need you to hold on. As tight as you can. Don't let go. Don't look down. Just hold on." She climbed onto the window ledge. Wind fierce. Rain lashed her face. 4 stories of empty air yawned below. She looked at the drainage pipe. 3 feet. Might as well be 3 miles. She would have to jump. With a dislocated shoulder. With a 10-year-old on her back. In wind and rain. This was insane. This was suicide. But the alternative was burning to death. Vivian jumped. Her left hand caught the pipe. Rusted metal slick. Wet. Grip slipped. She fell. 6 inches. A foot. Her hand caught a bracket. A bolt securing the pipe to the building. It held. Her shoulders screamed. Weight of Tyler plus her own weight plus the sudden stop pulled at the dislocated joint. Something tore. Something separated further. She bit down on her tongue, tasted blood, kept herself from screaming. "Don't look down," she told Tyler. "Just hold on." Above them, fire burst from the window they had just escaped. Flames licked out into the night. Vivian looked down. Parking lot 40 feet below. She couldn't climb down. Not one-handed, not with Tyler, not with her shoulder destroyed. But she didn't need to climb down. She just needed to fall in the right direction. "Vivian!" The voice came from below. She looked down. Colonel Hawthorne was there, in the parking lot, with his rangers. They had spread out a rescue net, the kind used by firefighters, held by 12 men. "Let go," Hawthorne shouted. "We'll catch you." The net looked impossibly small from 4 stories up. "Tyler," Vivian said, "when I say let go, you let go, okay? I'm scared." "Me too, but those men down there, they're rangers, best soldiers in the world. They won't let us fall." She hoped that was true. "Ready?" Tyler's grip tightened. "Let go," Vivian said, and they fell. Falling from 4 stories takes approximately 1.6 seconds. Vivian didn't think about anything during the fall. No time. Just the wind and the rain and Tyler's arms around her neck and the ground rushing up impossibly fast. They hit the net. Impact brutal, even distributed across the net, even with 12 rangers holding it. The deceleration enormous, like hitting concrete. But they were alive. Vivian rolled off the net onto wet pavement, Tyler crying but breathing, moving, alive. Hands grabbed her. Medics, trying to help. "My shoulder," she managed, "dislocated." "We see it. Don't move. We're going to—" "Do it now." A medic looked at her, young, competent. He understood. He grabbed her arm, positioned himself, counted down. 3, 2. He pulled on 2. The shoulder joint relocated with a sound like a gunshot. Vivian screamed. Then it was done. Pain receded from unbearable to merely terrible. She sat up, arm in a sling now, immobilized. But joint back in place. Around her the parking lot was chaos. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cars, helicopters. The 4th floor of Memorial Grace Hospital fully engulfed. Flames poured from windows. Sprinkler system failed. Fire winning. But the people were out. All of them. 12 patients, 9 hostages, 1 gunman, 1 senator's son. Everyone accounted for. Everyone alive. Vivian looked up at the burning building. Somewhere in there were 3 years of her life. 3 years of hiding. 3 years of being less than she was. Good riddance. "Valkyrie," she turned. Colonel Hawthorne standing there, uniform soaked, face grim, but something else in his expression, something that looked like pride. "Hell of a night," he said. "Is the boy okay? Carson?" "Stable, thanks to you, on his way to a better hospital. His father wants to thank you personally." Vivian shook her head. "I don't need thanks." "I know." Hawthorne looked at the burning building. "SWAT has Brennan in custody. They're asking questions about what you said to him, about the insurance policy." "I lied about the document," Vivian admitted. "But the insurance part was true. I found it in my research. $2 million, taken out 2 weeks before the surgery. The police will confirm it." And Ashford? He confessed. In front of witnesses. To being drunk, to killing Mary Brennan, to a pattern of negligence. That should be enough. Hawthorne nodded. "More than enough." He paused. "Where is Ashford?" Vivian asked. "Receiving medical attention. Minor smoke inhalation. He'll live." Hawthorne paused. "He's been asking for you. Wants to thank you for saving his life." "I didn't save his life. I saved the hostages. He just happened to be one of them." Hawthorne smiled slightly. "I thought you might say that." 4 hours later, the sun was rising. Fire out. 4th floor a ruin. But the rest of the hospital intact. Patients being transferred. Operations resuming. The machinery of healthcare grinding back to life. Vivian sat in the back of an ambulance. Shoulder properly bandaged now. Splinted. She had refused pain medication. Wanted to be clear-headed for what came next. A black SUV pulled into the parking lot. 3 people got out. Director Patricia Monroe, the woman who had fired Vivian 6 hours ago, Senator William Whitmore, silver hair, distinguished, Carson's father, Colonel Hawthorne. They approached the ambulance. Monroe spoke first. "Captain Hartley, I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything," Vivian replied. "I owe you an apology, several apologies, for firing you, for not listening to your concerns about Dr. Ashford, for enabling a dangerous physician to continue practicing." Apology noted. Senator Whitmore stepped forward. "Captain Hartley, my son is alive because of you. He told me what you did, how you saved him. I can never repay that debt." "I don't want repayment, Senator. I want change." "You'll have it. I'm personally calling for an investigation into this hospital's oversight procedures, and Dr. Ashford specifically. His confession has been recorded. His medical license will be permanently revoked." "Good." Monroe cleared her throat. "We would like to offer you your position back, with a significant promotion. Director of Trauma Training, oversight of all emergency medical protocols, full authority to implement changes." Vivian looked at her. "And Dr. Ashford?" "Dr. Ashford has been placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Based on his confession and your documentation, his career in medicine is over." "I want it in writing," Vivian said. "The promotion, the authority, and one condition. I want full power to terminate any physician who demonstrates a pattern of negligence or who retaliates against staff for reporting safety concerns." "Done," Monroe said immediately. Senator Whitmore stepped closer. "Captain, I also want to make a personal donation to establish a patient safety foundation in Mary Brennan's name to prevent the kind of tragedy that led to tonight. Would you be willing to serve on the board?" Vivian was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, I would." Colonel Hawthorne smiled. "Welcome back to the fight, Captain," 6 months later. The conference room on the 3rd floor of Memorial Grace Hospital was packed. 42 physicians, 68 nurses, 23 respiratory therapists, pharmacists, and physician assistants, all crammed into a space designed for 50 people, standing room only. At the front of the room, Vivian Hartley stood before a projection screen. She looked different now. Stood straight. No hunching. No false tremor in hands. Professional attire, blazer, slacks, hair cut shorter. Professional. She looked like what she was, someone in authority. On the screen behind her, a graph showed patient outcomes over the past 6 months. "Trauma survival rates are up 34%, she said. Voice clear, strong. "ICU infection rates down 41%. Surgical complications down 27%. These aren't minor improvements. These are the kinds of numbers that save lives." She clicked to the next slide. "We achieved this through 3 core changes. First, we implemented a non-punitive reporting system. Staff can flag potential safety issues without fear of retaliation. Second, we created interdisciplinary safety rounds. Physicians, nurses, and support staff review cases together. Everyone has a voice. Third, we established clear protocols for escalation. If a nurse questions a physician's order, that concern is documented and reviewed, always." She looked around the room. Most faces attentive, engaged, some taking notes, but a few looked uncomfortable, resistant. Physicians who didn't like being questioned, who resented the new system. Vivian made eye contact with each of them. "I know some of you find these changes difficult," she said. "I know some of you prefer the old hierarchy, where physicians were unquestioned, where nurses stayed silent, where mistakes were buried." She paused. "Those days are over. In this hospital, we care more about saving lives than protecting egos. If that's a problem for you, there's the door." No one moved. "Good. Then let's talk about the Robertson case from last week." The presentation continued for another hour. Case studies, protocol reviews, lessons learned. When it ended, people filed out. Some stopped to ask questions. Some offered feedback. The energy different now, collaborative, respectful. Vivian was packing up her laptop when someone knocked on the open door. Natalie Pierce, the young nurse who had laughed at Vivian 6 months ago, who had thought she was weak, useless. "Dr. Hartley?" Natalie said quietly. Vivian looked up. "I'm not a doctor, Natalie. Just a nurse with administrative authority." "Right, sorry." Natalie stepped into the room. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for how I treated you before, when you were on custodial staff. I was young and stupid and I didn't understand." Vivian studied her. "And now? Now I know better. You taught me that. You and this program, I'm a better nurse because of it. I'm saving lives because you taught me to speak up, to question, to not be afraid." Vivian smiled. "That's all I wanted." Natalie hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you hide? For 3 years? You could have been doing this the whole time. Why waste 3 years mopping floors?" Vivian was quiet for a moment. "I wasn't hiding," she said finally. "I was watching, learning, documenting. You can't fix a system from the outside. You have to understand it first, see how it works, see where the cracks are. I spent 3 years mapping those cracks. Now I know exactly how to fill them." Natalie nodded slowly. "That's actually brilliant." "It's patient. There's a difference." After Natalie left, Vivian gathered her things, headed for the door. Her phone buzzed. A text message from Colonel Hawthorne. "Saw the news about Memorial Grace's improved outcomes. Well done. The Rangers are proud. Coffee next week?" Vivian smiled, typed back. "Coffee sounds good. Same place as always?" "Roger that. 0800 Thursday." She put her phone away, walked down the hallway. As she passed the emergency room, she saw something that made her stop. Through the window, she could see the trauma bay, a team working on a patient. A young resident leading the code, focused, confident, doing everything right. And standing beside him, offering quiet suggestions, was Natalie Pierce. The resident nodded, listened, adjusted his approach. The patient's vitals stabilized. The team stepped back. Success. Vivian watched for a moment longer, then continued walking. As she exited through the main doors, she passed a small plaque installed recently. It read, "In memory of Mary Brennan and all patients lost to preventable medical errors. We honor them by doing better, by listening, by caring, by never forgetting that our first duty is to do no harm." Below that, in smaller letters, "Funded by the Silas Brennan Memorial Foundation for Patient Safety." Vivian paused, read it again. Silas Brennan was in prison, 20 years for kidnapping and attempted murder. But before sentencing, he had done one last thing. Established a foundation with Mary's life insurance payout, dedicated to preventing the kind of tragedy that had destroyed his life. Justice was complicated. Vivian stepped out into the evening air. The Seattle sky clear for once. No rain, just orange glow of sunset reflecting off glass and steel. Her phone buzzed again. Another text. Unknown number. She opened it. A photograph. An elderly woman in a hospital bed, smiling, thumbs up, recovered. The woman from room 404. The one Vivian had dragged through the fire. The message below. "Thank you for my life. Margaret Flynn and family." Vivian smiled. She didn't respond. Didn't need to. Pocketed her phone and walked toward her car. Somewhere behind her, the hospital continued its work. Saving lives, making mistakes, learning, improving. And tomorrow, she would be back. Training the next generation. Building something better. Making sure the invisible people, the nurses, the techs, the custodians, had a voice. Making sure rank and credentials mattered less than competence and compassion. Making sure the Mary Brennans of the world didn't die in silence. As she unlocked her car, one final text came through, from a blocked number. She almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. The message was short. "There's a situation in Denver, Children's Hospital. Similar patterns of negligence. 3 suspicious deaths in 6 months. They need someone who knows how to fix broken systems. Interested? Ghost Network. Vivian stared at the message for a long time. Ghost Network, the organization Hawthorne had mentioned. A group of retired special operations personnel who still served, still fought. Just in different ways. She could delete it, pretend she never saw it, focus on Memorial Grace, on the work she had started here. Or she could remember there were other hospitals, other Mary Brennans, other systems that needed fixing, other fights that needed fighting. Vivian looked back at Memorial Grace Hospital, at windows glowing with light, at people inside working to save lives. She had built something good here, something that would continue without her. She typed a response. Send details. Then got in her car, started the engine, and drove toward whatever came next. Because once a ranger, always a ranger, and the mission never ends. Night fell over Seattle. City lights came on one by one, and somewhere in the darkness, Vivian Hartley disappeared again. Not hiding this time, hunting.